Hello, everyone, and welcome to the QT2 Systems podcast series, My Life as a Pro. I would like to welcome Vinny Johnson today as our featured guest. Welcome, Vinny.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So, as you know, this series is about you as a pro. So before we get to the pro part, though, I want to kind of back things up. And because before there was pro, there had to have been age group, right? So maybe you can talk a little bit about your early years in triathlon, how you got into the sport, and some of your, the first few years of racing as an age grouper.
Yeah, sure. I think it was probably my freshman year in college. I swam in high school, and then I was able to swim in college. And it was the first week of practice or so, and we had to do a mile for time on the track, and then a mile for time in the pool. And we started out on the track, and I just ran really well, well ahead of everybody. And I kind of ran a little in cross country freshman and sophomore year in high school, but not much. And so I was a really good runner during the dry land training aspects of swimming. And so we ran a mile for time in the pool, and I kind of destroyed everyone. And then we jumped in the pool, and I got destroyed. And so swimmers aren't the best runners because they're so, big feet and big hands and flexible ankles. I'm kind of the opposite of that. And so it was kind of one of those moments where it's like, I don't know if I'm in the right sport or not. And then as we did more and more dryland training, I just was becoming more and more of a runner, and almost to a point where I was like, I probably should go out for track instead of swimming. But I loved to swim, and I stayed with it. But during the summer, I lifeguarded, and we had to. So this would have been my freshman year in college. We had to basically go to a triathlon and run the support for the open water swim aspect of it. So this was back in 99. So like Bud Light was a sponsor, everyone wore Speedos, like it was a whole different world. And so I was really just intrigued by it. And I was able to hook up with somebody that was getting rid of a road bike that freshman year in the summer. And then went through my sophomore year in college, which would have been, I'm sorry, um, it was actually 94. I'm sorry, 94. So 1994, so 1995 was my first triathlon. And so I kind of would train aspects of triathlon during the off season when I wasn't swimming. So I started to ride and rode with I went to University of New Hampshire, rode with their cycling team, and then ran on my own. So I kind of started to learn cycling, and kind of fell in love with that sport and started to follow like the pro circuits and the spring classics and Tour de France, and just kind of enjoyed that during the summer. And so I would, just ride, and that was my weakest. If you're a swimmer, you spend most of your life just your legs kind of hang out behind you. You don't really have a lot of power. And so that was always my weakest aspect. And then the running was great because my cardiovascular system was so advanced from swimming, and it was just trying to get the legs ready for running. So yeah, it would have been 1995. I did my first triathlon. It was just kind of an Olympic distance. And then I kind of just did that back and forth. But then I graduated college, kind of finished my first, or I'm sorry, I finished my last race in college, and it was kind of, that's it, like transition to like the rest of your life. And this is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to, get a job, get a house, take care of your house, watch football on Sundays. So I did that for maybe 5 years. And then this would have been like 2006. I was well over 200 pounds, wasn't doing anything. And my high school swim coach had kind of passed away, and he was very influential in my life. And so, kind of just as a token of appreciation, I went to the pool one morning and kind of jumped in and swam a couple laps and was gassed. But then I went back the next day and swam a couple more and a couple more. And then all of a sudden got back into that routine that was so important, or an important piece of my life through college and high school. And really just as we all know, it's therapy. It's a place where you can kind of control a lot of things. Your brain is full of files, but then when you kind of work out, everything's clearer. And so I just started to see aspects of my life improve, and started to lose weight and those kind of things. And went for my first run, which was basically like around the block, and that was it. And kind of rode my bike around the block. And then all of a sudden, I started to kind of want a challenge, and that was a 70.3. So it was one of the ones in New Hampshire early on, Moose Man. And so I kind of had a goal of like breaking 6 hours, and kind of just started to train when I could, not really knowing what I was doing. And then it just started to kind of click. And I started to get more and more kind of into it. So
Okay. So that was Moose Man was around
six,
2006,
yeah, 2004,
2000.
2006, somewhere around there would have been like my first longer distance triathlon.
Okay. So what that's so coming back, I mean, after all that, what made you decide you were going to try a 70.3?
A challenge, just a bigger challenge than
Yeah.
maybe what I thought I could do. And so, yeah, that was it. Yep.
And how did that go for you?
I was completely, it was good in terms of performance. I was happy with how it went. I swam kind of like first one out of the water, and then all of a sudden, just the train of cyclists, just blew by me for 3 hours. And then I kind of held it together on the run completely. I think I had a baked potato on the bike, and maybe some water. So obviously now looking back at it, I was completely had no blood sugar for the run, but like thought that's what you kind of do. It's a painful thing, and this is, the experience your body's supposed to go through, really not realizing there's other things you can do to offset all that. Um, and then, it was kind of, again, like I alluded to, it becomes kind of therapy, and your life is a little better because of it. And you have something to look forward to, a challenge, and you kind of work through things. And I kind of know I'm a teacher, so I was swimming before school, and I just, again, noticed like I'm more patient, I'm kind of mellow, and like everything is just kind of different. And so it becomes part of how you live a healthy day, not necessarily physically, but also mentally too.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you start paying attention to what you're eating and all those kind of little things. Um, and so I was kind of doing the half Ironman little circuit in New England at that time, which was Timberman and Mooseman and some Olympic distances locally. But again, always kind of keeping my eye when you're done, you kind of look at the results sheet and you kind of see where you fall. And you're always just curious, like, what are they doing at the top that's different? I'm working just as hard every single day, but there's something going on that is unique
Right.
compared to just my generalized idea of what training is, which was basically I was taking swim training, which is kind of warped because swim training is obscene amounts of time going back and forth in the pool, and kind of transitioning that to just running, which you can't do because of the wear and tear in the body. There's really not a lot of wear and tear swimming wise, and cycling was just always the conundrum because I just didn't understand what my struggle was. Um, and then I just noticed a group of people that had QT2 kits on, and they were just really really fast runners. Um, and So I decided to kind of get some advice from people that knew what they were doing. And at that
Mhm.
point, they had mission plans, which is basically you kind of pay for like a sequence of time for a particular race. And you had like a FTP test. They kind of set the zones up, and they said, do this. And I did it. And I could right away feel and see the results.
Okay. So what was the timing of that? Do you remember when you came to QT2?
Believe it was around 09,
Oh, nine. Okay.
2009.
So you've been racing basically 70.3s and some Olympic distance for a few years and
Yep.
doing okay, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yep.
just but not at
Yep.
the top.
No podiums or anything, but just,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
competitive-ish. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So you came and so you said you went with the mission plan, which is an uncoached, I mean, written by a coach, but an
Yep.
uncoached plan.
Yep.
So back in the day in 2009, how did that mission plan come to you?
That was back in the day when forums were super, super popular.
Mhm.
So that's where a lot of communication between people that did things that they had passions for would show up on a forum and discussions would happen. So Mission Plans eventually developed a forum. It was run by John Spinney. And then there were other little spin-offs like Tri-Fuel and I forget what some of the other ones were, but they was like this, this is pretty social media. So this is where
Mhm.
you did that and you posted your race reports and you were friend, you know, digital friends and you had people that you connected to. And so you started learning a lot and you develop a technique on that forum and I was able to kind of transition that technique into the developing form of the mission plans. And so I never felt like I didn't have a coach because I always had people that were part of mission plan, but
Mhm.
also driven by an experienced, knowledgeable coach. Um, and as kind of a student, like I was that eager student that wanted all the answers. And
Mhm.
so I learned a lot and I became, a student of, anatomy, physiology, and just really understanding what was happening on the inside. And
Okay.
I felt like because of that knowledge became speed in a sense.
Okay. So you had also mentioned your maybe less than stellar race fueling early on when you were doing it
Yep.
yourself. Was that also something that you learned through the forum and how to fuel for yourself better during your races?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I don't even know if it was core diet then, but yeah, I think you got a type of fueling plan. So I did that, and then that really changed everything for the most part. For me anyways, the nutrition piece to it, and then that was just huge because you're always able to kind of give as opposed to you kind of grow up, no pain, no gain. And the whole idea of, high school or even age group type of athletes or sports, high school sports, like you just don't see that, or you didn't see it back then, which was really just that idea of nutrition. It was like you kind of had the lunch at school ended and you went to practice and there was a water jug and that was it. Like we didn't learn how to really become athletes. We learned how to play a sport, but really become kind of athletic in a way to tap into your athletic ability via nutrition. Just wasn't kind of part of that 1980s and early 90s
Yeah.
kind of sport. And now you know 2024, when I go up and see what's happening with sport at the school I teach at, it's different. They definitely do a lot more with that. So
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. So you went from, all right, so you got a mission plan, which is
yep,
basically a training plan that was mailed to you. You had
yep.
the forum, you got a race fueling plan. So how did that talk to me about the races that came after that and how those were different for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole aspect of again that mentality growing up of always work hard every single day, 100%, no pain, no gain. Sweats, weakness leaving your body, like all that kind of mindset of how I was approaching triathlon kind of shifted once I kind of had more of the zones. Being able to control your effort, reasons why you control your effort on certain days. It's a lot of times it's like rest. People hate rest between intervals, but then actually understanding like, well, no, like if you don't have the rest, it just becomes an aerobic workout. Whereas actually, if you build rest in, then all of a sudden it becomes like an anaerobic workout. And I was super aerobic. So I needed to really go deep and do things that were very quick and hard in short durations to kind of push my kind of lactic threshold out because my aerobic threshold and lactic threshold were right next to each other. And so I was trying to get better, but you can't leapfrog your aerobic system over lactic threshold. So I was constantly trying to jam my lactic threshold out to bring my aerobic threshold along. And so once that started to happen, it really started to kind of click. And I kind of noticed that in college too. Like towards the end, I would jump in with sprinters the week before like a meet. So instead of doing, I was a long distance swimmer, but I was always kind of flat at races. And then I started to go in with the sprinters for a week or two before a race and really felt the pop kind of show up in the races. So I kind of knew that piece early on. So yeah, a lot of my stuff was very short and hard intervals. And so then it just started to kind of just really, really start to kind of take off. And I just felt stronger and stronger. And then I did my first Iron, again, setting up kind of a bigger goal. I decided to do an Ironman Louisville. I think it was the second year. I think that was 2000, yeah, 2010, 2011, somewhere in there. I did my first Ironman. But again, the nutrition piece was pretty bad. I think I got off the bike, started to run, and I was like, oh my God, this is easy. I feel great. And literally like 4 miles into the run, it was just lights out. Had to, get IV afterwards and all that kind of stuff. And so I think I took a little bit of a year break, and then um, I think, yeah, probably 2012 is when I started to get back into it, and did Placid for the first time, and that went really, really, really well. So,
Okay, so what was different then? What made it go really well instead of crashing at mile 4?
yep, hit the gym
Yeah.
and
Okay.
rode my bike a lot. So kind of realizing finally that my biggest weakness is strength. And so I just really, really worked hard in the gym to offset kind of all those years of swimming and finally develop legs and power. And so it became, most people I train, I have them ride, 90 RPMs and those kind of things. But every single time I rode my bike, I was riding it at like 65, 70. Just it was a constant strength workout. But then the nutrition piece and no understanding, like, develop muscle, you need protein. And so then all of a sudden the daily meals really started to kind of become a focus. So I really became almost like a weightlifter, specifically for my legs, just because my upper body was okay from swimming and you don't really need it too much for triathlon. So it just really developed strength, and that was the key.
Yeah. Okay. So Lake Placid. So what is really well? Do you remember what your time is or your place or anything on
Uh,
that?
um,
Just more of the feeling of knowing it.
yeah, I didn't. I want to say I went like in my first Ironman might have been like 12 and a half hours. And then I think Lake Placid was an hour faster. So I think I was like 11:15 or something like that. So I was still kind of in that, oh, that was good, decent, respectable. Um, and then I went down to Florida. So what I would do is I would do Placid in Florida just because of teaching. I wasn't able to do too much, during the year, and I always had the summers off. So I was able to train a lot in the summer. And so I think I went down to Florida, and I had a really, really good race where I don't remember the time there, but it was definitely well, it probably would have been an hour faster than Placid. So I think I started to get down into the low tens in Florida, and that's when it felt really good. The run felt really good. I was cycling much, much better. And then came back the next year, and again just really, really hit the gym hard. And I just remember, doing reps on my legs and just kind of realizing like this is visualizing the hills of Placid and doing all that kind of stuff, and just this is the time, nobody's looking. And this is where it all happened. So it really was that kind of fall winter transitioning into like 2011. That would have been no 2020 into 2012, where I went to Placid and had a really, really good race. I think I kind of went under 10 or got close to under 10. So it almost took an hour off. So I was
Mhm.
almost taking an hour off every year once I started to kind of get really serious. And again, had another great Florida. And then 2013, I think, yeah, around there, I did Placid again. And that was the one where I looked back and nobody was behind me the whole day. Um,
Wow.
I came in second in all age, second age grouper.
Yeah,
Um, and it was pretty darn cool.
that is pretty cool. So that was the race that you earned your pro
Yep.
card,
Yep.
Placid 2013.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So did you realize what happened? Like when you crossed the finish line, you were second. Did you have an intention of trying to earn your pro card? Was that something that was like on your mind or
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. It was more just I just wanted to race more
Okay.
because I felt like the sport is hindered by the cost of racing that distance. And so that was kind of frustrating. And so for me, it was a ticket to race. Um, because I always needed, and I feel like that with everyone. I think they need to figure out where their breaking point is in a race environment. And we expend so much time, sacrifice, and money to do that as age groupers once, maybe twice a year, and it all has to come together.
Yeah.
And that's huge to spend 6 months and hopefully it all comes together in this little window of time. And then when it doesn't, you think it's really devastating in terms of like what you did, how you are as an athlete, why am I doing this and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of unfortunate in that way. And so for me, I just wanted to offset that because I still in my brain, I still knew that I always held back. I wanted to know where the breaking point was. And it's
So
hard
you,
hard to find that when
oh
it's
yeah.
so much you almost play it safe because you expended so much time and money to get to a race. Like I just want it to be okay. I don't want to actually come unglued.
I mean,
Um,
that's so hard in long course and short course. You can kind of play. You can mess up because you can just show up the next week and do it again, but really different.
and I think looking back, like I didn't have a coach. I had plans. And I think that would have made a difference. Like I think I would have been able to work with a coach to figure that out,
Mhm.
training and finding it as opposed to me trying to figure out a way to do it in race. So that was why I was looking for that opportunity is to race more because then I started to get kind of addicted to the sport, addicted to the scene and all that kind of stuff and equipment and you know
All the stuff that comes with it.
all
Yeah.
the toys. Yep.
So you earned your pro card at Placid in
Yep.
2013 and you took it right away. You just said,
Yep.
yeah. Okay. So what was your first pro race then?
Hmm. I think it was Coeur I think it was Coeur d'Alene, and yeah, what it wasn't good. I felt kind of horrible all day, and then when I came back from the race, I was sick for a really long period of time, like a weird kind of sickness, a lot of fatigue. It was something GI. I got some kind of little GI bug, and so I just had no gears. Like I just kind of went. But my poor performance in low gears was really good. And so that was kind of a cool thing for me. Um, Really good for me. Um, and so I kind of knew that, if I was on, I could really kind of do something. And that's what a lot of times is we measure our best performances to our best performances, as opposed to start just pay attention to your worst performance compared to your worst performance. And that's when you see a lot of growth. And so I was able to kind of really get in that mindset of like not really being disappointed, but being excited because it was a bad day, but it was still much better than any bad day I've ever had. And so that's a great way to kind of understand sometimes fitness. But again, I got away with it because it didn't cost anything. It didn't matter. It didn't, so it's like it's one of those things where, if I had invested a whole season into that, it would have been more devastating as opposed to like, oh, I think I just went to Placid after that and I just did the swim and the bike. Because I was going to do a different rate. And so the card allows you to kind of, oh, I'm not having a bad, and that's what people don't see is, pros have bad days and they just get off the course. And as an age grouper, when your whole family is there, you don't.
Right. So, because as a pro, you pay, I mean, you get like you pay a one-time fee, right? And then you can race as much as you want within
Yep.
that. Yeah. So I'm curious though, like, how did you feel? I mean, other than how you felt physically, but just like mental when you showed up and now instead of lining up with the mass start and the age groupers, now you're in right at the front with a much smaller group. Was that exciting, overwhelming? Like, how did you feel to be in that position for the first time?
I felt a lot of gratitude. I never felt like necessarily like intimidated by it, or I just think because like like when people ask me about it, I think a professional athlete has done everything possibly wrong, and they just don't do it over and over and over again. Um, a lot of times people talk about golfers, like professional golfers, they're amazing. Their bad shots aren't that bad. They hit a lot of bad shots. They don't really hit great shots, but their bad shots are just not as bad as everyone else, and that's why they're good. And that's why they're professionals is that aspect of like I did 17 years of doing the wrong thing and I had 3 really good years. And the 3 really good years was only because of the 17 mistakes or 17 years of basically mistakes.
Mhm.
Um, and I was happy it kind of worked out that way because again, I kind of grew up being athletic and knowing I had potential, but just not understanding why I didn't have talent. And then I came to realize later in life that talent's overrated. And you become talented. Um, Again, there's outliers that, you know, but for the most part, I think when you look at any professional athlete, you'll just see an addiction to process. And um and even when look, Michael Jordan, he's like, I missed more game winners than I ever made. And so it's that we always see the highlight reel, but we don't see the failures. And so I really came to grips with just the things I did wrong and the failures I had, and just understanding that you don't they're part of you, and you just make sure you don't do it again. I think I learned that. And so when I was at that first start line, I just I knew I kind of earned it by failing a lot. And so in that sense, I felt like I kind of belonged. And so I
Yeah.
wasn't intimidated, but it also helped as a really good swimmer. So at the beginning of a race was like I was kind of in there. And so I don't know how it would have been different if you kind of was a weak swimmer and then just kind of make it up. So I was kind of in the mix a little early in the race. So that helped to propel momentum into a race. But
Yeah, I know a few of the other people I've talked to are all like, yeah, swimming was my worst thing. So the gun went off. I'm still standing there. So yeah. So it's got to be nice saying, all right, here I am, ready to go. And yeah.
but I
So
also I would also look for races that were um, they were difficult. They had difficult aspects to it that required some thinking and planning. If it was just kind of brute force, like go race, like I knew I couldn't compete. So I needed pieces of a race that were a little more difficult, and you can kind of work off. Like Placid is really great because people just are too aggressive early. And if you're patient enough, it kind of comes back to you. And so I think my first Placid race as a pro. No, we would. I think it was the only one. Well, no, the year after, I kind of just did the bike and a swim. I podiumed at Placid, and it was only. Well, I wouldn't say only because, but there was just this crazy torrential, like thunderstorm, way out on the bike course, and it was really just demoralizing. It was super cold, windy, like thunder, just lightning, everything, to a point actually where the pros went off on a swim and the age groupers didn't. I think they pulled the age groupers from the water that year, and there wasn't any swim time, which to this day is kind of disheartening to me because whenever you go to the results, I'm way down because I did a full Ironman. You saw like these times of people that didn't do the swim, and so they never adjusted that. So I'm a little pissed off about that still. But anyways, but no, anyways, there was this very demoralizing moment of the race, and in my brain, I was like, I need to offset that and just go like attack this because this is going to impact people mentally. Um, and that was huge. That was huge because it was a very kind of unique situation that I took advantage of, and that's kind of what I need. I need moments that are a little harder and offset that, so I can kind of take advantage of other people just kind of shutting down. So
Yeah. Take advantage of, I mean, the mental toughness. If you say, it's like,
right.
oh, I don't want to do this. I mean, your race is over, right? So if you say,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
taking
and
this head on, then
I could kind of see that happening where
yeah,
people are just kind of trying to get through this moment as opposed to I just said go.
yeah. And you got podium. That's cool.
Yeah, yeah, very, very.
Yeah. So once you turn pro, I mean, you mentioned the benefit to being able to race as much as you wanted. Did you keep working as a teacher at
Yeah,
the time?
yeah,
You did.
definitely.
Okay.
I think in my brain too, I was older. I think I was mid-30s when this happened. Um, and I was, I knew the window was closing, and so I really felt like I could take advantage career wise, financially wise, not necessarily by racing, but by coaching. And so I just tried to learn as much as I possibly could during those years as a professional, and going to a training camp. For QT2 had a training camp for pros in Florida. I was supposed to fly out. It was in February. I was supposed to fly out. Flights got canceled. And so I jumped in my car and drove 24 hours um, down to Clearwater. And I pulled up to the pool. I hadn't even checked in or anything. Pulled up to the pool, hadn't kind of showered or anything. And those days I had just like huge beard. Um, and so I pulled up and Jesse and Tim were with all the pros. John Spinney was there and they're just kind of waiting outside the pool. And I just pull up in my beat up Saab, open the door and like Red Bull cans come flying out, crawl out, and everyone's just standing around looking at me. Um, and I think somebody said something like, I just can't believe that guy is really fast. Um, and so that camp was great. I just really learned a lot about why pros are pros. They have the time to recover. Um, the, and that was an eye opener too. Like just the whole aspect of recovery, seeing some of the fastest athletes in the world really run 12-minute miles in their ZR. And I remember getting my ZR zone for the first time and just trying to squeak out, can I get to just the bottom of Z1, and that kind of thing. As opposed to like, no, make it your easy days obscenely easy in order
Right.
to make hard days obscenely hard. Um, and so that's what I learned primarily there was just the whole idea of body work. Seeing pros just wake up, getting their bodies ready, doing yoga, stretching, all that stuff before the workout, doing the workout, eating, stretching, body work, rest. It was just that perpetual cycle, and just understanding that, yeah, if you don't have a job, you're able to recover a lot more and be very, very fast. And so again, there's always talent involved, for the most part. But to really make sure that talent blows up,
Mhm.
um, you need to recover.
Yeah. So, but I mean, continuing to work full time, you couldn't really do that though, right?
Yeah, it
But
was nice. I mean, teaching at that point was easy for me. I had been doing it for so long. It's something I enjoy, so it never felt like it was completely taxing. As I became more and more of an athlete, the kids got into it. So go to track and do the track practice. I think I had some kids actually even talk about like I had a treadmill in my room. And so they would come in from lunch and I'd be getting off the treadmill. So
uh,
it was a good environment to train. I was 10 miles from my house. So I rode my bike to work, rode it home. I would run to work, run home. I mean, those 10 miles. So it was a great environment and it never felt like it completely put stress on me. It actually kind of almost enhanced it because I have a lot of training room and weight room here, that kind of stuff. So it was kind of nice in that sense. And then you have the summers to basically train. So that's when I used to put all my long time in.
okay. So you had, from a financial perspective, or can you make money as a pro? I mean, is that something that's
You
possible?
can,
Yeah.
yeah. No, I think you have to be the business aspect of the business mind, to sell yourself, and brand yourself, and have that piece to it. I remember one of my students was an art student, but he went to business school, and he is a very successful artist. And he kind of says this to his day. He's like, a successful artist because I went to business school. I didn't go to art school. And that kind of, stuck in my brain where it's like, there's a piece to business where people know. And so I think that's the key, where you start to kind of make a name for yourself. You set up training camps, you work with groups, and you get this following. And then all of a sudden, companies want to work with a following because you're influential. I mean, all the stuff I kind of did was pre kind of Instagram. So again, you kind of see that piece to it where you become this influencer. And so, yeah, I mean, the money is there. It's just, kind of branding yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you said that one of the things that you did that you were, I guess, able to leverage off being a pro, that was coaching athletes after and
Yep.
the experience that you gained from that. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. That again, it was the window. If I was 26 and all this was happening, I probably would have done more of branding myself.
Mhm.
Um, but I was kind of like, I have this knowledge base. I teach anatomy and physiology. I've been through a lot in sport, and I kind of knew I had a way of words and explaining through all the forum work. People appreciated the way I explained things, and so I knew that would be kind of the next step. I coached at high school level, but I just really couldn't handle it in a way. It's just different. I people did sports in high school to do sports, and so they were kind of, what do you mean you don't want to give 100%? Like, I don't understand this. So like my mindset, and then just wasn't kind of wired for that.
Mhm.
Whereas this kind of opened up the, ability to be frank with people, but also explain to them they were adults, they had passion, they had a drive, they had a goal, they had a specific thing they needed to do. Um, and so it's kind of like the, trust me now, believe me later. And so I was able to kind of do that. And so I kind of knew that was me. And so I kind of went in that way. So that was kind of the financial benefits of a pro card.
Okay. So how many years did you end up racing as a pro?
Um, I don't races, a lot of 70.3s, probably just a handful of Ironmans just because of timing with work. Um, so probably close to 20.
20 races. Okay. Over how
Uh,
many?
like 2.5. Yeah, I only did it for 3 years. That first pro card, you can have for 3 years. So it's just probably 20 races or so over 3 years.
Okay. And how did you decide it was time to end the chapter of being a pro triathlete?
I won an Ironman.
Okay.
What? There was nothing else after that.
Okay.
No, it was. Um, I knew my body was. I knew my body didn't have too much more in it. Um, and so I kind of made a decision. This would have been, I think 2014, 2015, somewhere in there, going into the fall. Well, going through the summer. I just I just didn't I just knew I couldn't do it anymore. Or I didn't know if I wanted to do it again. And my training was just really, but it was really good. Like I was just really, really doing things that I just never thought in my wildest dreams I'd be able to do training wise. Um, and so and it was almost sometimes when you get out of shape, that road to getting back into shape is really rough.
Mhm.
And so it was almost like my shape was so good. I almost like couldn't deal with like, let's do it. Let's get it ramping up again. Um, but then life was just changing. I had some things at home that were going to require me just to have some different responsibilities. Um, and so I just knew it was it. It was like this window of like, all right, this is it, next 3 months. Um, and I had a really, really great 3 months. And then I
Okay.
went to my last Ironman and we had a press conference. And I kind of knew by the way people were talking about the race and things about the race, and also knowing what their splits are for races and knowing what their tendencies are. Um, I knew that things were going to unravel for people halfway through the run. And I just had to be at that moment to capitalize. So it was kind of like this neat feeling of, again, knowing a moment during the race where I had to go and attack. And it kind of happened that way. We came out on the swim and just, it was people attacking on a bike, and like people just took off, but I just kind of knew I'd see him again. And it was about 20 miles left in the bike, and then all of a sudden I could kind of see folks just kind of coming back. And so I kind of went in that mindset of like, all right, first half of the bike, just do what you need to do, and then all of a sudden just start kind of ramping up. And then once you start to see people, especially in a pro race, there's not drafting, but it's there's something going on where it becomes very competitive. It's not like a time trial anymore. A solo time trial all by yourself, trying to bob and weave between crowds. So it's a very different type of racing too. And that's what kind of happened. We kind of came in, but there were a couple people still out on the run. But I just kind of knew and trusted nutrition. And just knew that they didn't have the nutrition plan I did or approach. And mile 16, past the last guy, and then spent kind of 10 miles having a really cool time.
Yeah. So when you pass someone on the run, they're normally not coming back, right? If you keep on doing your thing, you're not going to
Yeah.
see them.
And then, yeah, then you're just hoping, like, again, you're always kind of like, when's that cramp going to show up?
Right.
You know, you're always on that fringe of just something going wrong,
Mhm.
especially in Ironman, where when it unravels, it's done. And so you're just, it's like you go over a curb or something, like, oh my God, like, waiting for those little tweaks. And, again, like I wasn't injury free. Like, I had things that were tight, and you're always just kind of waiting for that thing to go. So it's just also being very cautious about, what's going on, because I mean, literally 1 mile left in a race, and, it can end. So it
Yeah.
is.
So which race was that?
That was
You
when
didn't, I
Beach.
don't think you said.
Yeah, it was North Carolina. Now I don't even know what it's called. I think it's Ironman North Carolina, but it was Beach. It's called Beach to Battleship. So
So when you cross that final 10 miles you're running on your own, how to feel when you cross the finish line, hit the
yeah,
banner?
no, it's I've only won 3 races, and it was on my last 3 races. So I did two like Ironmans. I'm sorry, 70.3s, kind of local-ish, not necessarily a pro group, but an elite group. Kind of won that. And those are like my only wins as kind of an athlete, were my last 3 kind of competitive races. So again, I always kind of say those words. I had 17 years of really kind of poor results, and I had 3 really good years, and then one one, like, my last 3 months of those 3 years was
Yeah.
best.
So when you cross the finish line of Beast of Battleship, you're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. No, I mean, I packed up everything, and we have a local person that takes bikes apart and sells all the little pieces on eBay, because you make kind of more money that way off your equipment. And yeah, I think I kind of got rid of all my stuff, and um that was it. Yeah. And no desire to do it ever again.
Well, let me ask that question. Would you do it again? Like,
No. Oh, oh,
if
do
you
it
know, if you
again
could
or
look
start
back,
now?
yeah, would you? Yeah, I mean, would you it? I guess let's see, how do I ask this right? If would you, now that you know what it was like to be a pro, would you have done it? Like, would you have
Oh yeah.
decided to go? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And I say this now, the best part of Ironman is the fitness that you carry through the rest of your life. So and I'm still able to do things physically at my age. I'm almost 50. I'm 40. I just turned 49. And so able to go places in the world, and, run up mountains and go. In terms of me, like, I always think, like, I want my body to get my eyes on, like, amazing things. And
Mhm.
so having that fitness and having that history of also knowing how to get your body ready for certain challenges, was just, yeah, I would do it again in a heartbeat, because of where I am now. Also understanding that the biggest lesson I learned from Ironman is I can do anything. Um, Again, growing up, I thought, you just have certain things that you can and cannot do, and I just don't believe that anymore. If I really wanted to do something, I know I can do it. And Ironman kind of taught me that lesson. And so it could be things in my career. It could be things, um, physically, things that I like to do. So like currently, I surf a lot, I golf a lot, I spearfish a lot, which means I have to hold my breath underwater for long periods of time. And so, all those kind of things require strength and repetition and working out. to do them proficiently. And those are all the lessons that kind of I learned through Ironman. So I don't, I really don't say I can't do anything anymore, and that's
Yeah.
because of Ironman.
Oh, that's a really empowering statement. To know you can do anything you say you're
Yep.
going to. Yeah. So if you had one piece of advice to tell your younger self, what would it be?
I think, and I say this a lot, consistency breeds improvement, improvement breeds confidence. And I always focused on early on the the confidence and improvement piece to that equation, and really not understanding that consistency is what you need to do first. So I focused on the outcomes and I didn't focus on the process. And so once you focus on the process, because that's controllable, you have direct control over consistency. You don't have control over confidence. You don't necessarily have control over improvements because those two things can't happen without consistency. And this means drinking water, eating, sleeping, not necessarily swim, bike, run, but just all the aspects of really performing well. Once you kind of do things very, very consistently, all of a sudden you start to improve and then you build the confidence. I was always, why am I not confident? And just not understanding I wasn't being consistent.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds so simple.
Yep.
It does, but that's a lot to learn to get there. But great advice.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Vinny. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I always feel like I come out a better person just hearing you talk. So
But
really,
again, that's only because I went through a lot of bad years.
but you learned from those mistakes, and
Right.
you
Right.
it made you want to be better. And
Right.
so,
Right.
and now you can do anything.
Yes. Yes. That's a great feeling to have.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot, Vinny.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Thanks.